welcome to another episode of Read It with Whiskey. My name is Laura Juntunen, and I am your host. Today, we are going to be talking to my new friend, Stormi Lewis. So me and Stormi met via Instagram, and we actually ended up doing a podcast swap, which is super exciting. So her episode obviously is out today, but I will be on her podcast later in June. So definitely keep your eyes and ears out. So Stormi Lewis is your typical girl next door from Kansas City. She has lived a very extraordinary life. She has been a dancing cocktail server and bartender, professional ballerina, tapper, jazz and contemporary dancer, American Sign Language interpreter, infectious disease student, business manager and marketer, Lincoln concierge, and more. Book 2 is called The Protector. It is now available on Amazon. But today we are going to talk about The Key. So here's the blurb for The Key, Book 1 of the Sophie Lee trilogy. From an early age, Sophie Lee Harris was chosen to be the keeper of the key without any choice. Designed to survive anything thrown at her, it's a challenge she's able to keep. The only problem is she can't remember where she hid it after a traumatic car accident leaves her with amnesia. James Moore loves his best friends, Tina and Ben, like family. It's time for their yearly trip to his parents' house. Despite Tina's determination to get him to settle down with a woman, it is the chance meeting with a strange girl running from a group of thugs with guns that is about to change his life forever. Will they be able to recover her memories before the man with the cane closes in? Is the key to her survival lost forever? Together, they scramble to put the pieces in place, but time is running out and lives are being taken. Who will be sacrificed next? Dun, dun, dun. So let's just get into this episode. Here we go. Welcome to Read It with Whiskey, an interview podcast highlighting self-published authors. I am your host, Laura Juntunen. The purpose behind this podcast is to help authors grow their audience while also introducing readers to their new favorite authors. Let's get to know the person behind the page. Sit back, sip some whiskey, and lean in to these self-published authors. All right, it is time for a Laura J. Live update. So it is mid-May. Camp NaNoWriMo was in April. I hit my 50,000 words and I took an entire week off to make sure that I was rested before going back and editing that first draft. So writing is exhausting, you guys, and I write really, really fast. So if I don't take time off, I get burnt out pretty quickly. So I took an entire week off. I did not let myself even open the manuscript on the computer, just completely made myself forget about it. I read a lot of books for the podcast. I got a lot of other marketing things done that I'd been pushing off. So it was needed on both a personal, mental level, but also for my business so I could get other stuff done that I was pushing off. I am now diving into the first edits of draft 1. Basically, I'm going to be adding around 20,000 words to this first draft, and it's going to end up right about 70,000 where Transient Pulse was. So Oscillation Rising will be right about the same. And once I'm done with that, hopefully I'll finish that by the end of May, get the book out to beta readers, be working on marketing and the book cover and all that kind of stuff. And then hopefully we'll see the book out very, very soon. I have not let you guys know when the release date is. However, in my Instagram stories, sometimes there are things in the background. But if you want to know more information and you want to make sure that you know it right away and you're not waiting for the next episode or trying to see something behind my back on an Instagram story, I would definitely say to sign up for my newsletter. So the newsletter is a great free way to get the information. If you don't want to be a patron member, this is a great alternate because you're going to get some information, not all the information that our patrons get, but you're going to get some intel there. So go to my Instagram page, either at Laura J Live or at Read It with Whiskey. Click on the link in my bio, and one of the first few little toggles is going to be to sign up for the newsletter. All right, let's get into the interview. Hello, Stormi, and welcome to the Read It with Whiskey podcast. How you doing today?
I'm fabulous because I'm here with you.
I love it. It has been a long time coming. I'm so excited to have you on the show, and we're going to talk about a lot today. But before we dive in, go ahead, tell our listeners, how did you decide that you wanted to start writing?
I always wanted to write as a kid. My dream was to either work for a magazine or be an author. But actually had a lot of people tell me that nobody would listen to what I had to say. And then when I found out I was battling bipolar disorder, ADHD, and chronic anxiety, everybody said, now they really won't listen to you. So I actually published two books back in like 2017 and 2018. And even then, I didn't tell anybody I was an author. And then right before I turned 40, the pandemic hit. And I was like, you know what? I'm getting too old for this. Screw it. And I started writing my first fiction trilogy. And that was August of last year. I came out and said, you know what? I am an author. And if you don't like it, screw it. No.
I love that. And it's so frustrating because there's so many authors out there. I know I was told that as a kid. I was like, I want to write books. And everyone told
Uh-huh.
me, you can't make a living writing books. Like,
Yep.
you can be an English major. And I'm like, well, what am I going to do? Teach? I don't want to be a teacher.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad that you pursued, even though people may have been telling you otherwise, because I got to say, I really enjoyed The Key. And we're going to talk about it a little bit. But tell me, what is your favorite part about being an author?
You know, I like that I have done enough books that I can now turn around. And for all the people that say that, they can't do it because they're too busy, I was consistently publishing books every 6 months, working a full time job. And the OG Storm Chaser has cardiovascular dementia. So I was helping my parents with that. And I still wrote a book in a month, and I still edited in a month. And then I still stretched it out to market it for the next four, because that's the part that I enjoy the most. But I really just am about taking the stress out of it, because with chronic anxiety, and especially with the pandemic, my symptoms have gotten off the charts. It's ridiculous. And so I actually started writing because I needed to find balance. I was working a job where it was customer service for a travel agency. So I was the end of the phone tree. So I was the one that was a live person that they could really release their anxiety, frustration, and everything else on. And as a bipolar person, you feed off of other people's emotions. So even though I don't take what they say personally, I understand where they're coming from. It's really hard for me to not absorb that energy, even though it was coming through the phone. So it was very important that for me to survive the pandemic, I had to find a release that would kind of balance. And because I do love writing so much, that's what started that journey. But on a daily basis, I have a chemical imbalance that tells me I'm a horrible person. I'm not worth being on this planet. And so, no excuse you can give me, I haven't given myself. So it's really nice for me to be able to say, you know what, your story matters. Because when I was growing up and I didn't even know, I had like my first suicidal thought, I think I remember being 5, and I was too scared to tell my parents. And it was books that helped me escape the chaos in my head that nobody could explain to me, including myself. I didn't know what was going on. When I was too manic and I couldn't sleep, I would hide under the covers with the flashlight, and I would just read books until the next day came. When I was too depressed and hurt to physically get out of bed, it was books that did help me with that. So I know from not only the telling part, but also the reading part, how important our stories are. And it doesn't matter if you have fiction or nonfiction, your story matters. And so now I can help other people understand that. I can help them push through their excuses and their fears, because your story is going to save a life. And there might be somebody just waiting for your particular story. And if you don't tell it, then they could end up making drastic decisions that would have a very negative ripple effect to this world.
Wow, that was powerful right there. Everything you just said. And I agree 100%. Having that creative outlet is so important. May it be reading or writing. And that's one of the reasons why I even started this podcast, is because I wanted to tell the stories of the authors, because they write their books, but there's so much more behind the page. The person behind the page is so important. And so thank you for sharing that with everybody.
Yeah.
I really hope they resonate with all that. Let's move on to publishing. So you said you really enjoy marketing, which I'm the other side of the spectrum. I enjoy the writing and creating, and the marketing, I'm just like, oh.
Now, I will tell you, I love the writing and the creating, and I love the marketing because that's another creative outlet for me. And
Mm-hmm.
I actually went in and got 2 degrees in marketing because I loved constantly creating. Editing that goes in the middle is
Mm-hmm.
nails on a chalkboard for me. So that's because I feel like I can't be creative with that. And I'm just like,
right.
so
Yeah. The editing. See, I like the editing because that's where I kind of niche down into like my true story, and I get like all the details in. And then I'm like, okay, once the book's written, then I'm like, okay, on to the next project. So I skip over marketing. But do you think that's part of the reason why you decided to go indie publishing versus traditional, is because you enjoy that marketing side of it? Or what was your decision originated around?
Oh, I'll be honest. The first time I wrote a book, so the reason why I had gotten back into writing was I had been in a very toxic and abusive marriage both times because I've been married and divorced twice. Woohoo! But the second one, he was military, and when he came back, he was not the man that I knew he could be. He suffered from the vodka flu more often than not. And so it got to the point where I decided to save myself. And when I left, because I hadn't really realized, everybody always said I was a people pleaser. And I think a lot of that came from when you're bipolar and you're acting out, and there's such a bad stigmatism to it that I wanted to make people like me so badly when I was okay that they might forgive me a little more when I wasn't. And so it actually became like an addiction, which led me into this, abusive marriage. And when I left, I knew that if I didn't stop that cycle, it would not end well for me. And so I actually, because I was in the marketing program already and we didn't have an internship, I started doing a blog. And so I started writing, and I was just using what I was learning to kind of play with, like, how to promote and things like that. And so I got on Groupon and I just started trying a whole bunch of random things that I knew I wouldn't normally do. And one of them was a yoga class. And she was like, we're going to Belize for a week. Come with us. And so for the first time, and I'm such a planner, I didn't plan anything. I packed a backpack, got on a plane, and met 15 strangers in a country I'd never been to. My parents were not pleased, but I showed up and she didn't tell me it was a couples trip.
Oh no.
So I showed up and I'm like, what's up, Pete? They were very nice. Everybody took me in, and every time I turned around, she told them about the blog. So she was like, hey, you got to do this for the blog. And I was like, I don't think I need to eat a termite in the middle of the jungle, but I did. And it's like eating a breath mint. You just can't think about it.
Oh, no, thank you.
So at the end of that trip, it was such a life-changing event for me that I was really getting pulled to tell my story about my marriage. And so on spring break, I took a week and I wrote a book. And so the first 2/3 of it is a lot of like my blog posts and just kind of finding myself. And then the last third, I really took the opportunity to write about the things that I remembered, because even now there's certain things that my brain is like, you don't need to remember, which is fine.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was telling a friend that I needed to get this out. So like my first book, I'll be honest, I didn't know anything. And my friend that was helping me had self-published. And so I think that's why I ended up doing it that route. Like I didn't know you were supposed to send queries. I didn't know you had to pitch your own book. Like I didn't know any of that. And at the time, Amazon's made it so easy that you just press the button. You're like, now what? Yeah. And so, and right before I got ready to push the publish button, he actually ended up passing because he finally drank himself to death. And then I was just horrified because I was like, okay, this doesn't exactly share his greatest moments. And it wasn't that he was a horrible person. He just had a lot of demons.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I'm going to get backlash. And she was like, yeah, but do you feel like your story can make a difference? And I was like, yeah, I really feel like I can help somebody. And then they tried to also get me to put the marriage part at the beginning. My philosophy is just at this point, after breaking my habit and everything that happens to you doesn't define you. It's just a part of the journey. And I didn't want them to focus on that. I wanted them to see how far I had come,
Mm-hmm.
because this is how it started, and not focus on that. So that's kind of how I ended up in publishing. And I honestly, like, I read all the books and there wasn't anything about what to do after. And so, yeah, the after I had to really kind of teach myself. And then I wrote a second one, and then I took a break because I was working multiple jobs to, pay off all these expensive pieces of papers behind me.
Right.
And so then COVID hit, and I found somebody because I was like, I really want my book in a bookstore.
Mm-hmm.
That's been like, I've always wanted that, so even as a kid, or in a library or something, like that. And I've met a girl, the Victoria McCombs, who came on and said, listen, you actually have to pitch them this. She kept talking about a query, and I was like, what's a query?
What
I
is
don't
that?
know.
What is this
I don't know what that
word?
is, but I didn't know what an ARC team was. I didn't know what a
Mm-hmm.
beta team was. I didn't know what any of that stuff was. So I learned before I did my fiction series, because I knew there was a better way.
Yes.
And now I do like self-publishing. I still pitch, but it appears like it's so difficult kind of still to
Mm-hmm.
get into publishing companies. And like listening to Victoria talk about how if her book sells on Amazon, she makes 29 cents a book.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually am in the process of, I've always had Chasing Stormi LLC since I walked away from my marriage. That was like my freedom gift to me. And I started a business because I knew that I had something to give back. And I didn't know what I was going to do with it for 5 years. And I kind of played with different things. And when I really stepped into the author side, I was like, okay, first I can teach people how to get their story out, because too many people say that they'll publish a book, and out of, like, I think their last count, there was over 382 million people in the US, and about 45,000 of them actually publish. So that's like 1% of the population. Out of all those people, that
Exactly.
most of them say, yeah, I want to publish a book, and then they don't, because either they don't know how, it's too much work, they don't know how to do it in a way that enjoys the ride.
Mm-hmm.
So I started offering that, but I really still wanted to give back. I started my podcast to help new authors, but I'm actually starting a publishing company to where I can work with authors. They will get the publishing side so they can get their books into bookstores like we've always wanted. Only I'm not going to take all your money. I'm going to let you have your creativity, unless you need my help, because some people do.
Right.
I know I need help in certain areas, and that's fine. But that's what I'm working on now, because it's just, I was designed to always give back.
Mm-hmm.
And so CS Press is coming, y'all. And once it's finalized, I will let you know. So those that still want to have the creative freedom
Mm-hmm.
and still make money can still work with a publisher like me, because I know you, I've been you.
Right.
So I'm kind of playing with my books and my dad's books. And
Yes.
then once I get a better handle of it, I'll open it to everybody.
And
so
that's
really
exciting. That's really exciting to be able to offer to people, because it's like, it's black or white. It's go traditional or figure it out on your own. And there are companies to hire to do certain aspects of it, but to have someone like you to walk someone through the process is going to be huge for them. You're going to have those steps.
There's a lot of people like you that you don't like the marketing because you're so creative on the writing side, and that's fine. Everybody has their strengths and weaknesses. And so like, if you don't want to market it, that's like playground time for me. So I will help you. But I also really like teaching people how to not make it overwhelming. So like, how to not get overwhelmed by all the different platforms and things like that. So again, I'm all about eliminating stress. There's enough of it in the world.
Simplifying it. I like it. And I like that you're a planner, and it sounds like you have a very structured approach. Do you write in that way? Do you have it planned out specifically for your series or anything? Or are you more of a pantser?
Okay, this is so funny. And I am. Okay, I will show you. That's my deadline calendar. Okay, so if anybody, for the people that can't see it, I got a desktop calendar, and it is plastered all over my wall, and it has multicolored Post-its on it because I was publishing 2 books of my own. And then my dad was like, you know what? I think I'll publish 2 too, because I've created a monster.
Oh no.
I'm okay with that. But so this is just my deadline calendar. Everything else is in Google and it alerts me, but this way I can see it consistently. So I like to plan things. When I write, it's not like that at all. I tried to do it that way, and my writing sucked. I kept going back and rewriting it, and I was like, why is that? And I can't write with confinements like that. So like, I never do page count. I never do word count goals. I say, I'm going to write from this time to this time, and whatever comes out is a win. And so, and we were talking just yesterday, I went with my parents, and I was telling my dad about book 3. And my mom doesn't even remember, but before we started book 2, she actually gave me a checklist of all the things she wanted in the second one. And so I'll have like certain things I want to touch on.
Right.
But then the story writes itself pretty much. And there will be things where I'm like, oh, we're going to do this now. Okay. So like in the key, there's a dream realm. And I thought it was going to be one and done. Well, after I got done writing the key, I thought that was going to be one and done. But here's the thing. So my grandmother, it has cardiovascular dementia, which is like the worst kind to have. And she is in her final stages. And I think this all started because we found out last year, and we've been dealing with it. And I just wanted to really emphasize that just because somebody leaves you, they never truly leave you. So that's what created it. Well, then as she got worse, I was writing the second one, and then suddenly there were rules, and it grew bigger, and like it became a prominent part of the story. So now in the third one, she not only does a physical battle, but she does a mental battle.
Ooh.
And my mom, I was telling her, I was telling my dad, and she was like, when did your book turn into sci-fi? And I'm like, I don't know, but it writes itself. So, I just roll with it.
Just roll with it. It's working for you. Keep on going.
The book really focuses on trying to tap into her memories, because she has to figure out who's after her and what they want. So you find out her parents were murdered when she was about 10. And so why we're talking about this dream realm is there's an in-between realm where it's not heaven or hell, but her parents, it gives them the opportunity to access her whenever she's dreaming. And so they can kind of help her. And you find out that there's somebody after her, but she doesn't know who it is. It's just a man with a cane. So that's why they call it Man with the Cane through the whole first book, because she's getting her memories back. But until she figures out who it is, nobody can tell her who it is. And you find out that her father, Jack, is a scientist, and her mom, Jess, is like a special ops. And they used to work for the Man with the Cane, and they give her a necklace when she's little. And so they keep talking about this key, and it's about figuring out where the key is, what the key does, and why Sophie has it to begin with. And in the beginning of the book, while she's running from these bad guys, she comes across a boy that happens to be trying to escape a really loud party. And so he ends up getting caught up in this battle that she's having in the forest behind this house, and unknowingly starts to fall in love with her because it's like a, love at first sight kind of thing. And so his name is James, and he has two best friends, Tina and Ben. And so they go and stay at his parents' house for the summer every year. And so they take Sophie there because they figure that's a safe place for her to kind of get her memories back and everything. So that is the key, is finding out who Sophie is, what she has, and why she has it.
It was so much fun trying to figure it out as a reader, and then getting to dive into her dreams and the pieces that are getting placed into her mind. Like, who's my parents? Are they alive? Well, let's find out within these dream realms. And she just learned so much information. And then at the end, it just cliffhanger. Oh, I'm so excited for book 2. Because book 2 is coming out on May 14th, correct?
That is correct.
And that's The Protector. So as you're listening to this episode came out on the 18th. So it just came out. So get onto Amazon and get The Protector, or The Keep. You haven't read that one yet. But girl, that cliffhanger at the end of book 1, oh my goodness, I'm so excited to dive into book 2. And I don't want to get into it because I know then it'll
you're going to hate me when you get to the end of book 2.
Oh no.
Well, I can tell you, for those that are interested, book 2 kind of picks up, and you do find out in the key that Sophie kind of can hear better, and she's faster than what she's supposed to be. And she does a lot of things that a normal human being wouldn't be able to do. And so you do find that, alterations may have happened. And so it's about her journey of figuring out what has happened to her, who she truly is, and what she's really meant to do. Right. And you find out who the man with the cane actually is at the very end.
Oh, I'm excited. Okay, so we're not going to give any spoilers because people got to go and pick up the key.
That's right.
But tell me, what inspired this story? Did it come to you randomly, or was this a concept that you had been thinking about for a long time?
So this is the funny thing. Growing up, I didn't have an imaginary friend. I had Sophie, and Sophie was kind of like a badass version of who I wanted to be. So I actually was Sophie. Sophie didn't have a name, but these are the things that when I was struggling and getting bullied and I would go play with myself, there was always a man that would do love at first sight because I'm a hopeless romantic. And, I would always be running from the bad guys and then save everybody in the end. And so I actually wrote it to paper, I think in like 7th or 8th grade. And then that was when it was really being plummeted by certain people that my writing would not be worth reading, and it got thrown away. And so when the pandemic came, I was talking to a friend and she was like, you've got to start writing again. And I'm like, I know. And my mom, right before that, had said, we fell in love with Nora Roberts. And she was like, you really pull people in with your writing. Maybe you should do fiction, because she doesn't really like that I share so much of my personal life. And I get it. It's a generation that's used to not talking about things.
Right. They avoid all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I was like, so I told her that, and she said, well, do you have any stories in mind? And I said, well, I started this in like middle school and I never got to finish it. And so I told her the basis of it, and she was like, oh my God, you got to write that. And so I sat down and I wrote a couple of pages. And the only reason why it's a trilogy is because one of my friends in the apartment complex came over and read it. And he's actually Mario in the book. And he was like, this would be an epic trilogy. And I'm like, it is 3 pages long. It's not a book. Are you kidding me right now?
Where do you see these extra storylines coming from?
But then the idea got stuck in my head, and it was such a cool challenge that I was like, what the hell? And so it's been fun because I tried to Taylor Swift it and lay Easter eggs along the way.
Oh, that's
and
the
stuff
best.
like that. Yeah. So it's been really fun, but I actually started, so the first one, The Key, I wrote chronologically,
Mm-hmm.
but The Protector, because I really wanted, there's so many characters.
Mm-hmm.
There really are. And a lot of people were saying, we don't know everybody's backstory. And I was like, I'm working on it. I told you it was going to be in the second one. And so I spent a lot of time giving you all everybody's backstory, Clarice, the man with the cane, everybody. But I would be writing and I'd be like, oh, I almost killed somebody, and it had been 3 chapters later, and I was like, I should probably figure out if they're going to live or die and go back and revive them. So it was more pieced together. And then, like, when I was writing the man with the cane, I was realizing, as creepy as he was hanging out in my head, it wasn't coming off as much. He's very elusive. You kind of don't really see how truly evil he is. So I started focusing on that. But the problem is that all the characters, because once I was in that mindset, all the characters were a little darker than they needed to be. So I spent 1/2 day and just did clips of who he was, and he's been psychotic since he was a toddler, and kind of went back. And so this book was just so pieced together that I was like, I don't even know if it's a story anymore. Like, I just really had just pieced so much of it together. And then when I read it all the way through, my dad was like, kid, this is really good. And everybody that was a beta reader that read it is so in love with it. And they're like, this is your best book yet. So now I kind of think I need to do pieces again.
It's like, all right, what do I do for book 3 now?
I know. So it was interesting that even my own writing style had changed between the 2 books, just because I was building everybody up. And then, like, I'd get caught in the storyline and was like, oh, I got to revive somebody or kill them off, one of the 2. And then I'd have to go back and add more chunks.
Oh, that's exciting. It's fun, though. It's so much fun being able to be the creator of your world and decide who's going to live, who's going to die, and what new characters have to be brought in. So when it comes to your characters, were there any specific characters that stemmed? You already said someone you knew inspired Mario's character. Was there anybody else who inspired any of the characters within The Key?
Jack is a younger version of my dad. Bill is probably his current version of my dad. I'm a daddy's girl. And I love the banter. Everybody's like, how did you come up with the banter? And I'm like, this is just, my dad and I go back and forth like that all the time. And you know, in my family, if they're not picking on you, they don't like you, you know, kind of thing.
Oh yeah,
and
same thing for my family.
And so it was fun to kind of pull that part in. And James is just that guy that I always hope to meet one day.
Yeah, the heartthrob of the story that everyone hopes to find.
Yes. Tina and Ben are a couple of friends that I still have in my life. Mario was kind of fun because he's a friend in the apartment complex. And so, you know, for the most part, everybody has some sort of characteristic of somebody I know.
Yeah.
Except for like Simon and the man with the cane. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess it pays to be crazy.
Exactly. But that's interesting because I've talked to a lot of different authors, and I like to ask that question because it helps me to kind of understand how they write a little bit more. So you bring a lot of people that you know into the stories, where I've had other authors who say, I have no idea where these characters came from. They just popped up. And I think I'm more like that. Like when I write my stories, the characters come about, and some of their personality traits might be something that I do or a friend or sibling does. But overall, they're their own person that I know, like from a dream or something. And so I can't like pinpoint it back to like a real life person. So it's interesting that you have so much real life in your story.
Yeah, mine are kind of half and half.
Yeah.
I find like some of them, I can't tell you where they came from. And some of them pipe in. Like I didn't even have Simon originally in the story. And then I was like, oh, okay. And then he was like a really bad guy. And I was like,
he's a very important part of The Key.
Yeah. And he wasn't, and Bill wasn't originally in the story either. He just popped up. And so, but because I think I was going through coming to terms, because I have to be honest, my love of books and everything I do came from Nana and my father, and they love stories, and they're the two people that really just love me for who I am. And so it's been and that's why I'm so close to them. And when we found out that time was running out and it was limited, that was really hard, because when she goes, I'm going to lose my biggest cheerleader, because no matter what I do, she's the one that I can call and she will say, I am so proud of you, all the things you've accomplished. I always love you. Like, she never hesitates to tell me how much she loves me and how proud of me she is. So it's going to be really hard, because like even right now she's so far gone that I don't get to hear those things anymore. And so that's been difficult, and I think that's why, like I said, the dream realm developed, and Jack is so important to Sophie, and why she loves books, and their connection, because the three of us, it's kind of my way of healing, maybe, to deal with what's going on. So
yeah, bringing that real life inspiration into the book, and you can kind of memorialize the whole relationship that you have with your father and grandmother into the story.
Yeah,
that's so heartwarming. Oh, I love it. I love the inspiration behind that.
So that's why, like, a lot of people are like, I can't change lives if I don't have a nonfiction book. Well, I will tell you, I mean, now that we're talking about it, a lot of people will see how many lessons and why the story even became. But the funny thing was my dad, he takes a lot of medications for his medical needs, and he was an avid reader as well. And he hadn't picked up a book in 10 years. And my book was the first book that he read. And he suddenly became my editor and my creative writing team. And we started bonding, more so than we already were. And he was asking me a lot of questions about how hard it was to publish a book. And he's always asking me questions. And we have the same kind of sense of humor. My mother doesn't think we're funny, but we do, and that's okay. Exactly. And so it's just been a really bonding moment. And then I turned around and he was like, so what do you think if I wrote a book? And he wanted to write a book for the grandkids. And I said, I will totally help you do this. And so I am editing his first book. He is 65, never considered writing a book in his life. And now he's writing his second one. And I haven't even finished the first one. And so, like, he says things like, I have to tell my publisher I'm not going to meet my deadline. And I'm like, your publisher has a book that comes out before yours, so knock it off. So you never know what you will inspire. Like,
exactly.
Again, when I was a kid, I was so upset about all the things my own brain was trying to tell me, like, you weren't worth being on this planet. Nobody cares about you. You're just a horrible person. Books were what kept me going. And I was not reading nonfiction when I was 5, 6, 7, you guys. So that's why I always promote, it doesn't matter nonfiction or fiction, you're going to change a life.
Yes. So I believe it. And you're doing so much else besides your writing, besides just the writing and helping your dad with his books. You also have a podcast called Bookish Chatter, and I've listened to every single episode. I really enjoyed the writer's block episode that just went out a couple weeks ago. Oh, I needed that one. But real quick, we don't have too much time left, but go ahead and tell everybody, what is your podcast about, and what is the hope that you hope to bring out of the podcast?
So Bookish Chatter is about bringing on experts, whether they're an author, expert. There's an email marketing one that's coming up. We talk about how to do podcasts, how to do social media, but we also talked about other authors. So it's about getting tips and tricks and honest author journeys. No person's journey is going to be exactly the same. It's impossible. And so what works for one person may not work for another. And that's fine. That's fine too. And I understand that completely. So the more people I can bring on, the better it will help more people. And so I bring in the experts, but I also get on there. And the one you're talking about is writer's block. And that's the one that I just talk about, how I kind of work around it and some other things. If I can help somebody go through the process and not lose any more hair than they're already going to, that is my end goal. I never want anybody to feel like they're alone. I never want people to feel like they're frustrated. You can have fun. Exactly. And I would rather have fun. I've worked enough crappy jobs. I'm sorry, but I have. I have figured out how to make it fun. Mm-hmm. I think there's a way to make money and love your life and love who you are.
So, this has been such a good chat, and I wish we could talk more, but we are right about out of time. So before we leave, this wouldn't be Read It with Whiskey without talking a little bit about whiskey. So to end my day, I usually grab a book and a little glass of whiskey. That's how I wind down. So how do you wind down at the end of your day?
If it's been really stressful, I can't do whiskey because it sets my insides on fire. And then I can't. So I'm a fruity drink girl. I like my pina coladas. I will read for a little bit, but then I actually have to stop reading and stop doing like social media or anything at about 7:00 every night. With the ADHD, because books are always getting me thinking. Right. So I will put something on TV. I'm learning I can't watch Criminal Minds before bed like I used to, mostly because not because it freaks me out, but because I won't stop watching episodes. And then it's like 1 a.m. and I'm like, what did I just do? But I have to have kind of that, I have to put some show on that I wouldn't pay a lot of attention to. Right. Just to give myself some new noise. Yeah. And then I try to sleep. But right now, my third book keeps trying to write itself right before I go to bed. So, yeah.
Oh, no. All right. So tell our listeners, where can they find you? Where can they find your books and follow along with your journey?
I love my peeps on Instagram. So I am under the Story Sharing Guru because that's what my clients like to call me. My website is Chasing Stormi with an I, thanks to my dad.com. So it's chasingstormi.com. And sign up for the newsletters because I'm going to be all over the place. That's they get a sneak peek of books. I know everybody's like spread out. You should be in more places, but I go where the people I love are, and that is where I go.
I love it. All right. And all of those links will be in the show notes. So you can just go ahead and click over there. Well, Stormi, thank you so much for being on Read It with Whiskey. I had so much fun.
Oh, heck yeah, girl. You're one of my favorite authors to follow on Instagram. So I was so excited when you said yes. It pays to stalk good people, just so you know.
Yes. Speaking with Stormi was so much fun. I mean, you could hear it in our voices. We really click, we really jive, and I'm so excited to hear the interview that I did with Stormi after this interview was recorded. We literally did back-to-back interviews with each other. Something else I wanted to talk to you guys about is the format for this podcast. So something that I'm going to start doing is actually reading the synopsis of the book off of the back cover. And so that way you guys can get the full feel of what the story is about before we even dive into talking with the author. Let me know how you guys feel about this. I know it does extend the podcast episode a little bit further. The introduction is a little bit longer when I do this. So I'd love your feedback. You can email me at readitwithwhiskey@gmail.com. I just love to get feedback from you guys and know what you guys want, what you guys don't like, because it's important that you guys are getting what you want. Coming up next week, I'm going to be interviewing Emmy Hamilton. And I am so excited. I had to give a little plug today because today is May 18th today is release day. So happy book birthday, Emmy. And I'm so excited to get your episode on the Read It With Whiskey podcast next week. Her book, Chosen to Fall, just came out. It is now available all over the place. And of course, our interview from today, Miss Stormi Lewis, her book, The Protector, just came out this week as well. So we got a bunch of book birthdays. Definitely go and check out all of these books and authors on Instagram. All the links are in the podcast descriptions. So tune in next week when we talk to Emmy Hamilton all about her book, Chosen to Fall. Until then, have a good one.